your best place to introduce yourselves. So we'll come to Mark. Guys, I'll just we'll get into this session. So we're not gonna cut the time of the panels. We'll be slightly later, breaking for lunch. But just having these people here is really important. So we're going to look at, this is entering the Smart City section, and we have an amazing organisation here in Galway called the Insight Centre, who are curating our next panel and going to tell a bit about their views. Now just getting a little international perspective on smart cities, opportunities, and what might be out there. Going to turn to Mark, maybe to introduce himself first and to kind of jump right in as to some of the stuff he's been involved with. So Mark, if I may.
All right. Good afternoon now. Thank you for hosting me, inviting me to have a chat with the audience here today. Brief background, Magnet, 11-year-old startup. I like to think that and use that phrase. Sometimes that annoys people, but one of the things for us is Magnet is a traditional and viewed sometimes as a traditional telecoms business. I am not a telecoms engineer. I'm actually a member of the AA, the Alcoholics Anonymous, not really, the Accountants Anonymous. I'm a bean counter by training and has spent years in the technology industry as an anonymous accountant working away with people like Yahoo, with network compliance in the tech industry, spent a number of years in California and actually brought Yahoo back here in 2004, 2005, and that was about a 400 job creation project we worked on. So a lot of experience personally, both from a US perspective and UK, and from a Magnet standpoint, what are we about? Really, it's about evolving the telecoms business away from traditional wires to looking at the range of digital services that we provide. And leaping straight into the Wembley and the Smart City story, let me just give you the two stories that might get your attention about the opportunity and the whole Smart City concept. You're in London. Just envision yourself going to a match in London, an NFL game, a soccer match, an event. You get off the tube. You're walking up towards Wembley Stadium. You're hooking onto the Wi-Fi because you and your friends want to do some selfies and upload some video about you're waiting for the event to kick off. There's ubiquitous Wi-Fi. It's there. It's free. It's available. You're thinking, I'm 2 hours before the game. I'm 2 hours before the event to kick off. You know what? I'm going to go shopping. And before you even walked up towards the new shopping centre with 140 outlet shoppings, it's a 140 outlet shopping mall with LK Bennett, Adidas, Nike stores, etc. Big data crunching has gone on in the background to say that you like Chelsea. So we pushed you a little ad that says you get 10% off if you go to the Chelsea store or the Adidas store, or get 20% off a meal in Wagamama's. So as you're walking up, you're being looked at, you're being assessed, you're moving through that environment, and you're able to avail of and engage with the retail community that's in that space. You're able to upload content, you're able to engage with the community more broadly around that space. If you've happened to park your car, as you drive your car into the car park, the AMPR, the automatic number plate recognition system, has already scanned your number plate, already knows what car you drive, what social demographic profile you are, because in the UK you can check your number plate. I know your credit score. Now I can start pushing you ads again because I know what demographic you are. Right? So when I talk about this, sometimes I use the phrase Minority Report, and people go, that's a bit scary, but I won't deal with that topic today. Another scenario, you're looking to rent, you're looking for space. Where do I live? You go to Wembley. Wembley was one of the top 10 most deprived parts of the UK. 8 years ago, the local government, the construction industry, ourselves, a partnership was formed. How do we lift this part of North London up with a fairly large population? How do we lift it out of deprivation? 1930s, 1940s housing stock, very poor connectivity, lots of red routes, which in London means you can't dig the roads up. How do we digitally connect that community? So what has come to pass in that world is that you now can rent an apartment in Wembley. That apartment comes with fibre optic broadband as standard, as part of your rental agreement, one of 7,000 apartments that you can rent in there. Some apartments come with a TV already as part of the rental, so your smart screen TV is already in there. You can have a cleaner come in twice a week. That's for those who can afford that, but also you've got a 35% social affordable housing mix. So for those who can't participate in high-end housing, they can still participate in these very digitally connected homes and units, which are part of an integrated strategy by Brent Council to connect the community, connect the business community, connect those who are digitally disconnected in what was a very deprived part of the UK, very disconnected part of London. And what's now evolved out of that strategy is over the last, I think, 6 years, it's been credited with the creation of just under 7,500 jobs. There is a plan for 7 launch pads in London, one looking specifically at sports, one looking at music. The footfall when we started working over there, and Phil Clapperton, some of you might know Phil. Phil's based in Galway now, and he's also commercial director for the UK. Footfall on the site, 2.6 million. The footfall is going to go to about 26 million. So the types of businesses that are now emerging with University of Westminster and others is looking at how can we use this mass of data, this footfall, to develop new industries. What are the new apps? What are the new technologies? What are the new big data scenarios that are available? And how is that being enabled? And one of the key enablers is Wi-Fi infrastructure and advanced telecoms infrastructure. Not just fiber optic, but ubiquitous Wi-Fi that is free for all to use. So everybody is digitally enabled, connected, can participate. And that is creating a fantastic, I would describe, launchpad incubation space. That's why the construction company and Brent Council are launching 7 innovation spaces. And I talked at an event previously that one of those spaces will be managed by ourselves, where we have staff there today. So we're opening that up to anybody in Galway who needs a launch pod out of London to base themselves for free for 6 months. So we'll give you connectivity, we'll give you fiber optic connectivity from here to anywhere in the world, because we are part of a broader global fiber optic network that we can take it to New York, we can take it to Hong Kong, we can take you anywhere. That is not an issue. And a sense of credibility, we provide, as an example, for Amazon, all of Amazon's data connectivity in Europe. So anywhere in Ireland, anywhere in the UK, Amazon, who effectively are a large part of the web, rely on us to provide their data connection. So we can take you pretty much anywhere in the world with your business. But it also means that we can take Galway anywhere in the world. So from a Galway perspective, there is nothing that should stop businesses wanting to start here, locate here, and make this a real attractive place to say there is no inhibitor. And a final point, just to talk about the Star Wars scenario and an opportunity for Galway, is the Hunger Games movie. So you're familiar with the Hunger Games movie in Wembley? They're building the Hunger Games experience. They're rebuilding the dome so that 1,800-seat auditorium like this will revolve 360 degrees with all the actors and all the stunt people around you. And you will revolve with an iPad on your chair, with the 1 gig connection to your chair, and you'll be immersed in the Hunger Games movie. Now, translate that into the Star Wars experience in Galway City if you could do something on the same scale. And that's the Hollywood movie studio using what was derelict land to do something really innovative that nobody's ever thought about. And that's sort of a little brief history of me. I said, I'm just a plain old accountant, member of the AA, the Accountants Anonymous, but in reality what I've been exposed to is some incredible innovators around me, and I think Galway has a huge opportunity to take advantage of this technology and leapfrog other locations.
That's great. I might just stick with Mark for a sec, Owen, if you don't mind. So my son Noah here is 10 and is brilliantly taking a day off school, which I'm delighted about, because I think he should be listening to this type of stuff. But Noah, as he gets older, I mean, what's he going to be doing? What are the opportunities here in Galway? And then just, if I can, with that lead in, I know you talk to the City Council, CIE have 14 acres there, the Galway Harbour have another 46 that can be developed. So Mark, your suggestions say, guys, let's do what? What do we do?
Yeah, very simple. So grand big visions, Hunger Games movies, park that for 1 second. Okay. Start from the basics, which is I want to be able to come off the train, park my car behind the hotel up in Eyre Square. I want to be able to walk anywhere in Galway and be connected. I want to be part of that digitally connected community. An example we're doing right now in Ballymun in Dublin is working with DCU. The students curate the website. There's free Wi-Fi access. We've launched a Centre for Social Innovation. So you look at Galway and say, why can't Galway be doing this? How can we create that pervasive digital infrastructure? You have the City Bike scheme as an example. What's to stop somebody here in Galway doing Cityfi? You think of those bike stations. They have power and they have telecommunications to them. You have an instant Wi-Fi infrastructure in Galway. Why can't you get 20 minutes, for free? So you look at powering that with powering what we can do, and what we've done in Spanish Arch, we've done the food festival in Galway, which is what we did. We put our own Wi-Fi infrastructure down at the bottom of Shop Street, and it's mounted up. You might see it on Spanish Arch, but the capability is to deploy that infrastructure for really powerful Wi-Fi infrastructure, taking the lessons we've learned in Wembley, and you deploy that same experience into Galway. And what you have is a very high-speed, digitally connected environment of Galway City. And you have other opportunities to extend that network using things like the city bike schemes, etc. But the capability is then to provide that innovation incubation mindset. I was talking to the guys in the Bank of Ireland about some of their people on a warm day don't want to sit in the innovation space, in the startup, the hub there on Air Square, is they want to go outside, but they find people are standing outside the building on a warm day with a laptop trying to hook into the free Wi-Fi. We're saying, so what if you could provide that capability out into Air Square? And that is very, very doable. But when we see hard facts, and one of the things is the city council sometimes struggle with is, what's the relevance of all this? What's this going to do? 7,500 jobs created in the space of 6 years in Wembley. That's what it's going to do. Brent is an area of 90,000 people roughly in Brent itself. Galway's what, 80,000, from population, so quite similar. You think of that job creation story and what it can do. There is no reason why Galway cannot avail of the same story, the same opportunity, with all of the assets at its disposal. And I just think there's a tremendous opportunity to leapfrog right now other cities and other locations and really drive forward. But it's about not just, Wi-Fi is there for Wi-Fi's sake. It can enable many, many things, and advanced digital infrastructure can enable many things. So just think of those two stories about getting off a train, walking down through Galway. You want to find out what's on, where's it on, and also businesses being able to use that infrastructure from an innovation space perspective and developing new apps. Element Wave and people using that kind of data. How can you use that test bed of Galway information to develop new applications that you can export overseas to a London, to a New York, to wherever it might be? But I think that the straightforward call is you have an opportunity right in front of you. We've done some tests and pilots. We've launched that service with the Food Summit, or the Food Festival. And it's a case of how can you expand on that and expand very quickly to grab that opportunity right now. So.
Interesting. Owen, I'll come to you. Do you want to have your mic there? Yeah, cool. Great, good. Double up. I'm going to do the intro of Owen because there's a lot to get through, and I think I can do it quite quickly. Owen, I tell people they redesigned Times Square, the UN building in New York, worked on the Moscow Underground, London Crossrail, all the street furniture in Barcelona, New York, about 300 lighting patents. They've got a new company which is joining an artery in a vein, and they're going to be able to open and close it from outside the body for dialysis. Serious thought leaders in Billings Jackson, but most importantly, he has an old boat called the Pangur Bawn down at the docks in Galway, which needs to be fixed up. But Owen, you're just back from some interesting work last night. Just managed to make it. Tell us what's going on for you, and maybe relating it to Galway and Galway's opportunity, or what you'd like to see happening here.
So can you hear me?
Yeah, hold it up.
It was very interesting talking to Mark just before we sat down here. David mentioned I've worked in quite a number of different cities. So most of the time I'm working with municipalities. Each city is unique as a kind of snowflake. They're all very different. And they all have different silos. We talked about silos earlier, different requirements. And every city I go into, it's like starting again. Like yesterday, I was in Istanbul. I've never been in Turkey before, and I had to get in deep with the municipality about what they need. Now, so the debate and what they're all looking for is smart cities. So what I want to get across today is that I'd like to talk about smart cities, what that actually means, but I'd also like to talk about it in the context of you guys, which is, you're talking about lean startup. Like, how is it relevant? How is a city relevant to lean startup? Like, that's a really important question. Now, yes, you can set up infrastructure, which is Wi-Fi, and with that infrastructure built, I think that's essential. You've got to do that. And I think, Mark, you're going to be a very busy man, for doing that. But when you build it, where are you going with it? And you've got to look at cities as what they need, what they require. And actually, a group of innovators, young tech people, is what they need. And once you have the infrastructure, and once you have the right kind of thinking, and when you build a partnership with the city, it's possible for a city to leverage this innovation that we have, which is this new digital technology. Leverage that to improve the city, to improve people's lives. And that's not what's happening at the moment. Most cities are run on a kind of authoritarian basis. It's very pyramidic. You have groups of people, and down near the bottom of the pyramid, if you have an idea, it's not much use because you're not in charge. So to break that system, what we're promoting, and I will actually be talking to Mark about it in earnestly about some of the cities we're working on, is to try and crack that natural, hundreds of years old municipality sort of system, and allow there to be a platform so that we can all participate in the running of our cities. And that's a smart city. That's where we need to go. And that means that we could actually create scenarios where we can work as a community, we can bring more to the city. This is what I was talking about in Turkey, with a group of guys in the middle of nowhere in a town called Kayseri, which none of you, I guarantee, have ever heard of. Turns out everyone in Hackney's from Kayseri. I didn't realize that until recently. But it's a town about the size of Galway, and their municipality has invited us in to partner with them to develop new solutions for their city. And what they're doing is they're going to create a platform where their own community and their own people can join in and run the town. Now, for most municipalities, that's a very difficult thing to allow to happen, to open up. It's kind of communist. It's a bit hippie. And actually, California, the Silicon Valley, has actually shown us that that's possible, and it's good, and commercially it might actually be a good idea. And for Galway, I think that's the drive to the lean startup. There may be some things that can be done for the city where an entrepreneur, a young startup person, can build on a platform and do something for the city, whether it's greening the city or creating a participatory kind of platform where everyone can roll in together and do something. I know you've got the Latin Quarter. We're trying to promote that area, for example. You could get people to start recognizing the value of that. You could start building up information platforms. Like I have a boat in Galway. You sail out a couple of miles, you get a north wind, you're in Spain in 3 days. The connection between here and Spain is incredible because we all sailed. We used to sail backwards and forwards very easily. It was easier to get to Spain than it was to get to London for us on the west coast. There's all these connections that are physical and old that we could uncover and unearth and use this information technology to build up those stories and make a proper connection with the Latin Quarter, which is its real, where does it really come from, and things like that. I mean, they're just examples, but I think it's endless. It's endless, what you could do. But we have to get the municipalities to open up to the idea and release us, I suppose.
Excellent. Love to see the questions coming in on Slido here, but really I want to get out of the way and let you guys talk here and let you talk amongst each other. Mark, do you want to add to what Owen was talking about there? Or?
Yeah, I think there's almost the Kevin Costner Field of Dreams movie, if you build it, they will come. And there is another great example of a business model that I never knew about, never thought existed. And over the last few days, I've been testing people out by saying, who's familiar with the web, Twitch? Yeah. And most people look at me like I haven't a clue. Now I pretend to look very, educated and say, of course I know what Twitch is. It's about the same size as YouTube. It's the YouTube for gamers, so most of you know it's YouTube for gamers. And I discovered this about 6 months, a bit longer ago actually, but we were approached, and let's just think about what connectivity you can do. E-gaming. Any of you are familiar with e-gaming and the money in e-gaming and the amount of jobs created in e-gaming, and you think about EA Sports, etc. Riot Games in Wembley. Phil was approached by Riot Games, one of the big League of Legends is the game. They have their sort of World Championship World Tour. The first prize, and this is 5-on-5 players. This is what might open your eyes and you might go, oh, okay, this is worth listening to. $5 million is the first prize for the game. Okay, the players trade at $1 million a piece in Taiwan and South Korea. Now, I never envisaged a business model where when I go and talk to my customer services team, one of my guys is a heavy e-gamer, he spends over €100 per month in buying new power-ups for this League of Legends game. I hadn't a clue. And then you look at the hundreds of millions being created by this particular environment. So the event that Phil actually ended up working with Riot Games on was 6,000 fans come into this stadium, but over 20 million people watched the event live. Second most watched event behind the NFL. Right? Now, they needed 20 gigabit connectivity to run that event, but they take this event around the world. I mean, there's Paris, Berlin, out to Taiwan, etc. But this is a business model you never thought existed. Up until 5 years ago, Vieta said, you're going to have 6,000 fans, and these are not 18-year-old boys. The gender split is roughly 60-40, 60% boys, male, female, not boys. Average age of the gamer is 28. Actually, the largest gaming population in the world are females. That's the largest gaming percentage, because women don't look at themselves as solitaire being a gaming environment. But come back to the rationale for Galway is that you see, back to the Field of Dreams analogy is, did we ever see just providing connectivity that a business model like this would evolve that could draw thousands of people into a location and also showcase that location to 20 million other eyeballs around the world? 4 hours, 5 hours on Saturday afternoon in Wembley, 6,000 people paying £70 per head, staying in a hotel, buying food and drink in the area. That's a business model. You think, why couldn't we take advantage of that here? The connectivity is here. So what business model would that enable? And what business, if you're here as an entrepreneur or thinking about big data, what could you do with that data set? So that's the data pieces I don't know, but we're simply saying, if you provide the infrastructure, look what can happen, which hopefully builds on your point.
We have the Romeros here. I met them last night for the first time, like legends in terms of the gaming thing. There's about 100 gamers looking together to put a porter shed of their own together. You know, at the moment, there's an opportunity there if we give them the platform. A question from the audience: how do you address privacy issues of the data mining involved in building smart cities and advancing digital infrastructures? I might just take that question just before we pass on to Insight.
I think that's a huge question, actually, even beyond the urban environment. I had a friend who bought one of the Google Nest thermostat systems. Now, when they bought it, it was Nest was the company, it still is, and hadn't been bought by Google. And she put it on her wall, set it all up, and then when she heard Google bought it, she put it in the bin straight away. And she just didn't want Google in her house. She didn't want, don't, you know, there's ups and downs to all this, but it was a privacy issue. And we did a huge home controls project with a German company called Buschjager, and it was all about the environment that you live in and what happens in there, and about privacy. And I think the smart cities issue, I think it is an issue of who you are, where you're going. Do you want people to know that? So I think there needs to be a certain degree of respect for your privacy in terms of tying up with these systems, and it's definitely an issue that has to be addressed, and trust is a big part of it. And I do think a transparent approach where you simply say, yes, we have your data, it's locked up solid. You know, you use Amazon, for example. Amazon, by the way, despite the shopping thing, as a platform technologically is a really strong platform. It's very safe, it's very reliable, it's the way they developed it. This is to do with the actual programmers. So we need to, if we're building our smart cities and we're asking you to link into the city and we're asking you to participate, we need you to trust the systems that we're putting into place. So I do think privacy is a big issue, and it should be just very clear where your data sits and what's being done with it. Because I'm kind of analog, I'm kind of old school, and I'm uncomfortable about people knowing when I'm having a bath. You know, I don't know why. You know.
Well, we were going out to dinner on Monday night with Mark and Katie, and we were able to check on what their kids were doing through Nest, videoing their living room in San Diego on the way, which is handy. Yeah, I know. But just the last one: could a smart city environment improve traffic and make it easier and faster to get around the city here? Mark, maybe finish with that one, if we may.
The answer is, well, not for all scenarios, but certainly it can help. We've carried out a piece of research, second year in a row. It's freely available to everybody who wants to go to our website. It is a survey of 540 SMEs in the country. And we've actually gone to a number of chambers of commerce, including Galway Chamber, to talk about the findings and the impact of cloud on the environment. And in reality, what we're seeing in this research is about 57% of businesses, there's an acceleration who allow people to work from home. So there's many, many instances now. When you take the Lewis strike today, I drove up, because I actually live in North Wexford. This is a good example. I'm not living on my own fibre footprint. I rely on a local wireless provider. I live with sheep outside that window and horses outside that window on a hill in North Wexford. I drove up here today, and the traffic reports around Dublin were nuts because the Lewis was shut down. So it's not just a Galway scenario, but I understand the Galway specific issue. But can smart cities change the traffic and deal with green agenda, carbon footprint? Yes, it can certainly tackle some of those issues, because it's allowing people to work remotely, to work from home, to avail of new technologies, cloud technologies. My wife has just started up again a recruitment business, and rather than having an office, she and her team work from home, but work from their homes, their kitchen tables. As it happens, her business model is working moms who had to step out of the workforce. They step back into that workforce, but they're all using cloud telephony, cloud solutions, and sharing of documentation to be able to work remotely. So they're not driving anymore as much as they had. The fuel costs are far lower. The ability to attract people on a flexible lifestyle is that you can go and pick Johnny, Mary up from school, etc. So it does allow businesses the ability to offer people to work more remotely. At a Galway Chamber event, she may be here today, but she works for Goodbody in Bowles Bridge. But she actually lives, I think she lives in Castlebar, but she's able to work remotely 3-4 days a week and goes in 1 day a week. Amazon, as an example, as a proof of concept, employ over 300 people in Ireland working from home because they can't get the language skills, or people can't locate close to Amazon because of the shortage of housing. So there's a number of things that smart cities can deal with, and also the technology can enable to address issues such as traffic. So that's just a little snapshot of, I think, what can be achieved.
Could you just have a little message that comes up as the guy's driving into town where it says, do you really need to be in town?
that is our next ad. We were only talking with the guys saying about the next ad campaign, which is the Lewis strike. You know, what can we do with the Lewis? Because why are you in your car? You know, what is it? Why do you need to be in that car when you can be potentially more productive at home? So.
Guys, thanks so much. If you can stay with me just for a moment. Just going to invite Insight now, so I'm really excited about the way that they've curated this next section. It's going to be quite, what's it called, fire talks, let's say brief slides for a few minutes, followed by discussion. But if I can invite the Insight Centre team, plus Liam Hanrahan from the Galway City Council to come down and take their place. And guys, maybe you can stay and join in the discussion for this next piece together. Yeah. So, well, we all these are done. We'll give you those two slots up the front because I think most of these are filled. So, Mary, do you want to do the intros? That would be fantastic. So it's a great team. Yes, yeah, we will.
Will you slide down? Yeah.
So
perfect.
Share the,
You're okay. So guys, next up we have smart cities and smart communities, and that's curated by the Insight team, and that will be followed by lunch. So this is going to be interesting. I'm excited for it. Thank you.
Okay. Hi everybody. Thanks Dave, because I thought we were going to be 25 slides between you and lunch, which would not be a good way to go. So we're going to change it a little bit and give you we're going to do some lightning talks as part of this session, and further questions up here or thoughts or whatever. My name is Mike Conroy. I'm with the Insight Research Centre. I'll talk about that in a little bit. My background is 30 years in sort of US multinational R&D activity. Most recently as head of Cisco here in Galway, so I've sort of lived the dream of starting in a Portershed type building in the GTC in Galway and building out the Cisco campus, and part of that I was GM over in Nortel. So it's been fun being with Cisco. So what we're going to do today is have a range of interesting talks from a couple of global leaders in Insight, Martin and Ali. And we're also joined by Pat McCarthy, who's a VP and CMO with Huawei, which some of you probably know is a very large Chinese company with a big operation in Ireland. And Pat's going to talk about the big, broad ecosystem. And Liam's joined us from the City Council to balance things up because all the rest of us are engineers. and that'll keep sense on the discussion. So I just want to introduce a couple of things before we get going. So Insight, it's like if you said there was a 420-person organization, which is absolutely research and development focused, operating across with 130 partners, headquartered out of Galway, you probably wouldn't think of the university. But Insight is an organization that's been in Galway, formerly under the name of Derry, with about 120 people. But now it's part of a much bigger organization focused on data and the power of data and the use of data analytics, not to understand and to predict, but also influence the future across a whole range of sectors. And so 430 researchers and students. Before you all think that they're all academics, the vast majority of people are actually competitively driven to bring in research funds from Europe and from private industry, as much as state funds. 55 contracted industry partners, 140 international research awards. A lot of the guys here lead EU-wide or international projects that have lots and lots of partners, and there's been 7 spin-outs and 35 license agreements. So it gives you an idea. But to the points made earlier by Mark and others, some things we sometimes miss or forget is, having come from the private industry side of things for many years, and the comment on resilience earlier, I think this sort of, the west of Ireland, particularly Galway, Limerick, that area, pound for pound, there's very, very substantial innovation going on from an ICT perspective. So if you look at the change of companies like Avaya, HPE, Hewlett-Packard, Intel, all of 300-400 person global R&D organizations right on our doorsteps. And one of the opportunities, I think, as things converge and standardize from a platform perspective, is how do you engage that community in the startup community and sort of make it an ecosystem of innovation. So Insight's active in lots of different areas. I won't talk about them. Wearables, personalized medicine, smart environment, how do you personalize e-government services, sentiment analysis in the retail and many other services, financial analytics around statistical modeling, the move, the digital journey, that's essentially the virtual supply chain, driven by Industry 4.0, and the agri-food, sort of moving from traceability to transparency, and all of those sort of interesting things. So if anybody's in the audience who's got interest in any of those things, happy to talk about them and what's going on across the center. So I think it was talked about earlier, but to me, in terms of that inward investment, in terms of talent and bringing in companies, is actually about quality of life. And quality of life in terms of your career, the environment you live in, the ecosystem, and how you innovate and operate globally. Sometimes that means you all need to be together, like Mark said, walking down the street. Sometimes you need to be really well connected globally. And Ireland, I mean, Galway's got a big problem with scale. So the only way you can scale is to be part of a much bigger ecosystem in terms of investment. So part of that quality of life, I think, is driven by data. So that's one of the themes we're going to talk about. So with that, we're going to do a couple of lightning talks. So we'll see how fast we can get through a lot of slides. But the purpose is to put the discussion here in the context of maybe European international networks that Martin's involved in, for example, similar type regions, similar types of innovation. Ali will talk about the strength of data and the importance of data, because a smart city is a sort of an open city, to the point earlier, because that essentially, if there's anything to learn from the innovation of the last 10 years in the mobile industry, it's about openness and the availability of data. So innovation in an ecosystem is about data. Pat's going to bring all these experiences from Huawei, having worked with many, many companies over the years. So sort of right around the world, so he'll give us a bigger perspective in terms of the MNC ecosystem, and then we'll talk about in the panel about how that's relevant from a Galway perspective and what's going on in maybe in Ireland, connecting into that ecosystem. So with that, I'll hand it over. We'll do some questions at the end.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike, for the introduction. I think I will start with the reason why I'm here. So Martin Serrano is my name. I work in the National University of Ireland Insight Center for Data Analytics. And what I have done in the last years is working with the municipalities, most likely in Europe. So we have already worked with several projects since 2009. And we have use cases, we have demonstrations and products that are not really TRL9 ready for the market, but are demonstrators that are coming from research solutions. So this has been transferred amongst all these projects to companies, and we have been successful on that. So I am the leader or the head of the unit in the Internet of Things and stream processing. So here is a kind of a big link between data analytics and the devices and sensors. And we also do applications in terms of semantic web. So that's why the full loop, the full control loop in here is represented. So my group is kind of about 10 people around, expertise, postdocs, researchers, research assistants, programmers, developers, and so on. But the point that I have been facing in these 7 years working with the municipalities is that there are misconceptions. When you go to the industry, when you go to people, municipalities, they said, I am a smart city. But what they really have is just an ecosystem, an urban ecosystem. But sometimes they are very advanced and they said, I have been green. I have already systems, solar panels, and they are green cities, still working in that process. More advanced people think like, okay, I have already digitalized all my systems. I have already digital data, digital information, and they stamp it like smart cities. They are not wrong. It's good. I mean, it's good. They're in good process. But it's until when they connect, until when they exchange, when they are capable to reuse all these systems for a specific purpose, which is the citizen, benefits of citizens, facilities, is when the smart city concept becomes to be more realistic. And this is what the debate becomes to be. And here is the storyline for our group. It's not the trajectory behind. So what we work precisely is in the European space. So there is one big group, 250 smart cities already cataloged, recognized, evaluated, which is called Eurocities. And this has been like a virus, a viral effect. I'm not talking about media, I'm talking about cities transferring and sharing information. So that was passed to the future cities in Asia, then the Middle East, adopted in that order, then it comes to the Southeast, like Vietnam, and then it comes to Africa as one fever. And lately in Latin America and North America with the Smart America on 29 September last year, when Obama announced it, America go to smart, or Smart America. This is kind of the side effect of this one. However, in Europe, in this projects, research, and industrial, and most likely innovation process, so we have been working in these legacy systems to enhance and to evolve beyond the smart cities. So we're talking about the evolution of these smart cities. And for that one, we have the Open Agile Smart City Initiative, which Ireland is part of it already. So the idea in here is that industries can closely evolve with these research evolutions to take the results and immediately satisfy needs in the cities. Obviously, there are different ways to engage in this one. So we have been pioneers, and in the beginning were only 7 countries and 35 cities. So that was, I'm talking about March 2015. By September 2015, when we joined as a cluster, we already have 65 cities, and 3 of them are the 3 cities the main cities in Ireland. Without any catalog or without any specific order, right? So Dublin, Cork, and Limerick. Dublin, Cork, and Galway. Limerick is in the pipeline because they are preparing the agenda for join. So what I will just explain in here is 2 simple examples that we have done working with municipalities: Istanbul, London, Athens, Rome, Lille, Madrid, and Galway. They are municipalities mainly. So we have been able to take the data and put data for analytics to provide better services for the citizens in terms of traffic management, in terms of mobility, tourism, and so on. So particular problems that they have with this platform, what we call Vital Operating System. So it's just to show you that we work closely with the municipalities. This is just screenshots of what we have monitorized. It's not only monitorization, it's also prediction and also analysis of the traffic congestions. So this is very useful for the municipality of Istanbul, IMM, traffic municipality. This is an implemented solution they haven't adopted, and they have already made it a product or make it an adopted platform for them. So we have been recognized for this top work in the Middle East as one of the best practices in Europe to get good these solutions. And just last week, when we bring these solutions into California Hackathon, so we applied for the Public Safety Challenge, and we got the 2nd place amongst 200 hackers and 20 teams. So in somehow there are good things, good synergies when we work with the municipalities, because we see the real problems. And then when we create solutions, it's a real solution. In the other side, of the smart cities is the hardware part, the technology part. And in that one, we have also some people working on that. With Open IoT platform, what we do is we connect all these sensor data, all these devices, via analytic technologies or via semantic technologies to facilitate and virtualize the data, and then make some more benefits for this data in terms of analysis. And with this one, we have been pioneers since 2011, providing this open source platform. So everybody can, in the technology side, access that one. So with this one, what I'm just saying is that there's a big opportunity for smart cities to take these innovation results, to take these nearly ready to go to the market, and then extend it to business opportunities. And this is what we are doing at the moment in some of the cities in California. So I really, in order to keep it in short, I think they will be more interested if we have interactions and questions. But in here, what we have done is especially to engage with these municipalities to absorb the problems and give solutions from the research perspective, with the support of the European Commission and the municipalities. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Martin. So that just gives you an idea, just right on our doorsteps, some of the connectivity that's going on and some of the best practices. So going back to the big ecosystem, I think that one of the tricks is to figure out how do you sort of make something like the region here scale in terms of interaction. And when you've got that level of connectivity to other centers, it's a real advantage. So with that, let me pass over to Pat McCarthy. Pat's a Chief Marketing Officer and Vice President with Huawei. He'll give a little bit more about Huawei in Ireland in a minute. But he's been very active, not just obviously across the globe in terms of working with very, very big service providers, in terms of their priorities, because ultimately the business, the government, and the citizens and the ecosystem SMEs have to find a symbiosis that leads to progress. And he'll talk about also some activities going on in Dublin, Smart Dublin, that's relevant, I think, to the audience. Okay.
Good. I have this one, okay. Do you have the flicker? Thanks. So I'll keep it brief so you can get to lunch. Okay. So Pat McCarthy, we're part of the European Research Centre community in Europe for Huawei. And we set up an Irish Research Centre, initially in Athlone, grew it in Cork, and 2 years ago we set up one in Dublin. So it's a group that's grown. We're a bit of a startup ourselves. We've grown from 32 to 100 now. Overall, about 150 people in Huawei in Ireland. So it's interesting to be a startup within a company that's a $60 billion company. And the culture of Huawei is a bit of a startup. It's 19 years old. It's grown to 60 billion. But the culture is still very much driven like it's always drive, and trying to expand into new markets. So it's a very exciting place to work. From an Insight, great to be invited here today. Mike, thanks for the opportunity. I got on board with Insight to help due to previous context, I think, more than competence. But it's kind of interesting. What I saw coming back to Ireland, I came back to Ireland from Germany, that for what I wanted to do, I needed to leverage the skills of Insight, the skills of Connect, which is the open cloud and the open infrastructure, and some of the interesting things around smart cities. And to that would be very interesting to me in some of the things we were looking at doing in Ireland, but also particularly in Europe, which is my main focus. So this is a slide from our smart city deck, and I just added two things in it that I thought was relevant today, which is talking about the business model and the living labs. So one of the things that I found working with smart city projects is that some cities tend to be focused on the government, some cities might be driven by the commercial side, some are more innovative, looking at life and looking at innovative applications. But the really great cities are the ones that bring those together, and where none of those stakeholders have a dominant role. So we're not being held up by either a government process, or we're not over-dominated by business interests, or we're not actually maybe not enough scale with maybe pure startups. So you put the three together, it gets very interesting. And I'll tell you about a story which is a good example of that in Amsterdam. The second thing I think is interesting I'd like to talk about is, in addition to the technology, which I can talk to you offline, it's the business model and the living lab. So the idea of the business model, and the startups look at that, where's the pitch for the first example, but where is the money coming from? And the money for a smart city in Galway won't come from Galway. There isn't enough money to do something of interesting in Galway. But if you do it in Galway with a view to a global stage, it can be very interesting. In a previous company, for example, the connected car, working there, it actually started in Gothenburg. As an accident, two people, one interested in IT, one interested coming from Volvo, the two people got together and started figuring out what would a connected car look like. And they figured out an idea, did a pilot, and all of a sudden it became a strategic project that went on a global scale. So I think the key point I would say is think about Galway getting great ideas from the world, getting into the ecosystem and seeing how you can leverage that, and then think about great ideas from Galway going onto the world stage. When we think about the platform, this presentation, we talk about life. I think it's kind of interesting. We're in this life building. I was never here before. It's a great building and very nice to be here. But the life is very important. What is the scenario that's going to be interesting, that will be compelling to people to use the application, that's relevant and that's exciting and that's useful and everything? What's the industry side? What's the industry platform that will bring people together? And one of the things we wanted to do in Ireland, in Huawei getting involved, is if we could help enable the platform, how could we grow the platform in an open way, with open data, open infrastructure, open APIs? And to do that, we've looked at a project working together with Insight to achieve that. The government is obviously important. They've got reasons that they want to do things and they want to sponsor things, but there's a certain pace that you have to work with. So one of the things is this project I just finished with, which is Amsterdam. And I think it's one of the better projects that certainly I've worked with. That's very interesting. And it's a project that was built around the stadium. Huawei's involved about 12 stadiums in Europe, many more around the world, where, picking up what Mark talked about, the Wi-Fi has been one of the key enablers. So every building of that nature, has a pretty demanding environment for Wi-Fi. We put in the Wi-Fi infrastructure as one of the things. We put in the cloud, we put in the application platforms to support it. But so it's done in partnership with the commercial business that's actually building out such an entity, because they want to drive it. So that's kind of one of the reasons why do we do it. We're not purely doing it for charity. There is actually a reason why Huawei would focus on this. And recently, due to the unfortunate situation in, say, Paris and other things, Safe City has now become a huge opportunity as people try to look at that challenge. It's a sad reality, but it's a huge scenario in this whole world of smart cities. Some of the applications, one of the things that's interesting about the Amsterdam arena is it's not just a stadium. It's actually 1/8 of Amsterdam. The developers who built that area also happen to build all of the infrastructure in 1/8 of the city of Amsterdam. So they're very interested in actually developing the business in that area, developing that as being a cool part of the city, and making it a good place to live, work, visit, and everything. So what they do is they say, okay, let's have a Magic Monday, where people come in, developers, and have an opportunity to pitch ideas, and they sponsor that. And they sponsor the developers to go through the cycle, to throw up things, some of which get piloted, and they work through, and some of them become commercial opportunities. And they do that not just because they're generous, they do it because it makes that part of the city more interesting, more good. So that's an example of how the business community, the industry can do it. And there's a whole bunch of interesting ideas. And I think it's a clever way to go about it, because it creates a regular place to get this cross-pollination. So whether it's the medical example that we had earlier, getting the medical and the IT people together, those ideas of an opportunity to pitch, share ideas, and get the different people working together is cool. We expanded from Amsterdam. We're working on other cities. Groningen in Holland is a medical. So that city focuses all about looking at the medical opportunity. It's a medical city, and we've been working to help realize what could we do around the medical side, and the other two we're advising and helping with the journey. And then we expanded, this last slide, to where do we look at other places around Europe. So there's a few interesting stories. We're helping Dublin with the area. We brought the Dublin team to Amsterdam. We brought the Croke Park team to Amsterdam. And they were very interested in seeing what could we do there. And it had opened up to different thinking that they hadn't thought about. And that was good. So we work with Jamie Cudden, we work with Paddy Flynn and Google, and that's getting more and more interesting. Another example, the London one in the middle, was with the University, London Imperial College, which is a bit like Insight. It's a big data-oriented research. And they did some work around stats and how they could model and how they could do things in London City. A startup came out of that, did interesting ideas, which then was applied to Milton Keynes. Milton Keynes won the best awards there for smart cities in Europe. And UK, London, I think, won a very high award for the Smart City Index. Frankfurt, the story was about schools. Manchester, I think, was about transport. Paris, they're going to put in 17 municipalities. And there's clusters where maybe there's areas of development. Where can we put in some extra data or in cloud infrastructure and try and redevelop parts of Paris? And down in the bottom right-hand corner is the hackathon, getting developers together from China and universities in Europe to come together to try and do things. So it's just a taste of examples. And what basically it is saying is, you can pick an area, get some clusters together, try and find somebody that's interested to support it, and don't look to the government as being the only scenario to achieve it. You have to look at some other business models and try and think about the different industry structures. I love the idea of the medical, great one for Galway. I love the idea of the Dockland, great opportunity. Might take a while, I heard of some planning delays. But pick something that has some critical mass and then try and use the incubator. We work with the guys in Dogpatch. Try and use the incubator as the place to come together, because one of the things that's interesting for me is I've focused on digital SME. I heard Mark talk about it as well. But actually, the interesting thing is the SMEs is actually where the real innovation happens. And that's one of the interesting things. If you can enable the SMEs and you make life good for them, I see myself as an SME, even though I work for Huawei. So I think it's interesting to think of that way and say, well, if I was setting up an SME, I wouldn't want to go to Parkmore. I'd love it to be in the middle of the city. So think of the needs of the SME. When I put our office in Dublin, I put it in the centre of Dublin. People wanted to put it in Sandyford. I said, sorry, it has to be in Dublin. Okay, that's my pitch. Is there any questions?
Thanks, Matt, very much. Matt lives in Galway, but he also wants to be really near the train station, right in the Lewis, I know that. Hey, next, Amsterdam Arena. Next up, Connacht Rugby Ground, 10,000 square foot connected, right? Okay, next up, and conscious of time, going to introduce Dr. Ali Intisar, who's with the Insight Center, and he's going to talk more about the sort of power of data and how to leverage existing data to sort of build new services and to sort of help that ecosystem. So here we go.
Thanks, Mike, for the introduction. It's a little bit hard to be between the lunch and talking between. I will try to be quick as much as I could be. So just to give you a brief introduction, so I'm Ali Intizar. I'm taking care of a unit for reasoning and curing, part of the Insight Center for Data Analytics. So Martin already introduced what he's working in the space. So just to justify the space where I'm working on is we work on the upper layer of the data. So we believe that the infrastructure is already in place, and we try to collect, we have the already collected data, and we try to make sense out of this data, right? I'm leading a team of 10 researchers, very enthusiastic PhD students together, and we are working on several EU projects for the smart cities for the last 3-4 years. I'm just going to talk about the perspective of the smart cities. So when we look on the smart cities, particularly the vision of the smart cities, at the city administration level, we think everything is connected in the city. So we have an ICT infrastructure in place, everything is automated, and all these services provided by the cities can be connected together. So this is the main image which is most kind of agreed upon for the smart city. When we talk about a smart city, how the smart cities are, how they look like, people think of this kind of visualization of the smart city together. As part of our studies in the EU project, we ran another survey and asked the citizen how they want to see their city and what for them is a smart city. Citizens come up with a different perspective. They think of the smart applications. They think of a near real-time application which they can use, whether it's helping them to make their traffic problem solve, whether it's helping them to find a parking spot, or it's helping them to make a smart home surveillance, water issues, electrical issues, all together. When we talk about the policymaker of the city, which think of the long-term vision of the city, how they want to see their cities in the next 20 years, how they want to look their city in the next 30 years, they have a kind of a different vision of the city, which is very important. And they think of looking to answer those questions which they think that which kind of problems cities are facing at the moment and how they can solve them in a longer term. Just to give you an example, so this was the Los Angeles Times in 1998. So people envision, they don't necessarily call it a smart city, but that was the vision presented in LA Times at that time, that how the city will look like in 2030. So people vision about this city that they think LA will look like that in 15 years from now on. This is the reality. This is what we see right now in LA, that they never think of at that time that there would be that much urbanization, so many people will move into the cities. The existing infrastructure will not be enough, right? So we have a different kind of problem here. So we not only trying to solve a smart city, thinking what we can solve it right in this space, but we are thinking in a longer run that we need to provide a system which can survive in the ecosystem and cities can shape themselves as they grow. Giving you a local example, I was just looking on the RT archives for 1981, I see for the Galway, and there was one documentary saying that Galway on the west side need a shopping mall, right? There was big emphasis, there was a campaign going on that we need to build a shopping center on the west side of the Galway, right? We got that. We are facing a problem now with traffic jams on the west side. So we have this shopping center, we have a traffic issues there, right? At that time, nobody think that this problem will come in 20 years after that. Now what the city is doing right now, city is looking for planning to find a bypass, to build a new infrastructure where we can move around the traffic out from the city. The problem comes again that now we are talking about a new shopping center on the west side, further ahead, and who knows, after 10 years from now on, we will be facing the same issue, right? So what I want to say here is that nobody can know what's going to happen in future. What we can do is we can make a collaborative effort involving citizens, policymakers, and the city stakeholders together to build a policy which can survive in the long term, and cities can adopt accordingly. What can make a difference here is now we have the benefit of the data. The things what we don't have, we didn't know about these things 10 years ago, but right now we know that. We have infrastructure in most of the cities in place. We have everyone here with having their smartphones. If you don't know that any smartphone what we are using here is, on average, they have 10 sensors in that. And we are producing continuously an enormous amount of data, which could be used. And it should not be used only for giving the numbers to you. Like, it should not be telling, if I want to know that how many cats are stray in my street, that's not the solution people want. People want to know what's the conclusions and how you can resolve the problem. Telling you that you are stuck up in a traffic is not the number we want to draw from the data available. What we want to know is someone to tell me automatically that if you are going to take this path, there's a high chances that you will be stuck in the traffic. Well ahead before I go there. This is a City Pass project I have been working for the last 3 years. It's part of the EU project, and we have a partner cities here in city of Brasov in Romania and city of Aarhus in Denmark. And I really like to give the example of the City Pass because the cities we have involved as a pilot, they are not as big city like if you think of a London or if you think of a Paris. They are in medium-sized cities, same as what we have here in Galway. And I really like this infrastructure that it's not only a policy implemented by the city stakeholders, but it's a combined policy where they involve the citizens, they involve the technology enthusiasts, they come up with a platform for innovation. So if you look on this on the left-hand side is that this framework let any information come into the platform. Citizen can provide information. It's the responsibility of the city framework to analyze it, to test its reliability, and then draw the conclusion out of it. And if you see on the right-hand side and the end, they also support the innovation platform. Cities cannot do everything for the smart city. What they can do is they can facilitate an infrastructure and invite the companies, enthusiastic technologies to come and build up some new application which can make this vision of the smart city true. Just to give you an example for the city of Brasov, as part of the City Pass framework, we built a city dashboard for the city of Brasov here using the City Pass framework. So it's a city in Romania. They don't have very good infrastructure as we might have in the west side of Europe. So they don't have a sensor in place. So what they come up with this is they provided a website. People can just log in and report the problem they are having in the city. Whenever they report a problem, it pops up as a dot here in the map, and a citizen has been given a tracking ID of the problem they have reported. And they can track back when, how their problem are going to be solved. It not only helps the citizens to get the satisfaction that they are watching what the smart city in the city is happening and how active is the city administration, but it's also helped the policymakers to understand what is the main problem for the city. For example, when they launched this website, the first problem what we have seen, the most cited problem, like the most people complain about, we never thought of that. In Brasov, they complain about wild bears and street dogs. You always think of that people will complain about that street light is broken, but every city has a different issues. And having this kind of system allows them to understand what people are really feeling and what are the main priority problems they can solve. Giving you another example of a city of Aarhus in Denmark. So this is a more, I would say, a rich country with some sort of infrastructure already in place compared to Brasov. So they have a sensors already in place in the city, which are continuously monitoring the traffic condition, any incidents in the city, air quality, parking places, position. So we went to a further level ahead here in the city of Aarhus, and we proposed a city dashboard in a real time. So if you see these bubbles are popping up, these are the events happening in the city in a real time. So you don't need to wait for someone to report that there is an accident in the city or there's a traffic jam in some place. These bubbles will automatically pop up based on the sensor values. And if the more critical the event is, the color of the bubble was changing to give you a sense that that's a very important event and it should be addressed immediately. Similar, I'll give you a local example on the Dublin and Galway. We have a city dashboards. Right? We have available similar, but this is more about giving a central platform which could be used to give a one place all the information available in the real time. A parking application example, on top you might have used some of these parking applications which were mainly focused on how to pay for parking spot, right? As part of the City Bus project, we developed this parking app for the city of Aarhus, which lets you decide from the home when you're leaving which parking spot you are looking for or which is the closest place, where, parking spot to your destination, right? And if something happens between, like for example, you are on halfway of your journey and you know that that parking spot is totally filled up, there's no more space, or there's a traffic jam on your way, the system can tell you in real time that it's time to move on. So I will just conclude my talk based on the focus of the data, and I will say by giving those examples, what I want to show here is that cities have a similar kind of problems. There are some problems which we have been tackling right now, they might come again in 20 years' time, right? The difference right now, we have the infrastructure to collect the data, we can analyze it, and we can make an ecosystem of the cities which can take on board the citizens, which can take on board the city stakeholders and the policymaker, and they can coexist in a loop, and they can adopt with the passage of time how they want the city to look smart. So let the citizen decide that how they want to see their city to look smart, and let the companies or innovative technologies to come forward and build up some applications which are useful for the citizens. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Ali. Conscious of time, we'll take a couple of discussion points, and purposely we went through some material because it was just to give an idea to the audience of, the sort of capability and thinking that's around. Okay, Liam. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I suppose just before we go on, just to address a few points there, and from Owen's presentation there, smart technologies and its application for a municipal authority, for any local government or indeed national agency, is only part of the solution. There is a significant amount of analysis required behind it in order for it to make sense. So we can produce, and we do produce, significant amounts of open data, and we can put it up online, and we have our dashboards, etc. But if that data isn't used properly and in context, it can get skewed. And I suppose that's a significant part of our role in local authority, is doing that. So to give a bit of a historical context, for example, the supermarket issue in the West Side in Galway in 1981, a long time before I was working for the council, but the rationale for why that supermarket was required was because the data showed Galway at the time in the West Side had the highest proportion of single parents, single mothers, living in what anybody who was from Galway would remember as the Rahoon Flats. And it had the highest proportion of single parents in Galway without transport. There was no supermarket. There wasn't one local minibus that used to go around the West Side and Rahoon selling bread and milk out of the back of the minibus. That was the only place you could get your groceries back in the 80s in the Rahoon Flats. So that's where the context came in of why the supermarket was needed, you know. And I suppose those things continue to be developed. The example of the bypass as well. The bypass is not a city solution for transport. The city solution, as Owen said, is to put in place a system that says people leave your car outside the city and take public transport and use public transport apps to get around the city. But the reality is that we live in a city split by a river where half the people to get to Dublin live on the wrong side of the river and need to cross the river to get in and out of the city. So you have to, the analysis is required there to use that data. And I suppose the other issue just Owen brought up there around is how to connect in. You know, it's around how to use that technology and other mechanisms to engage with the city. We don't operate in silos anymore. We don't operate with the sort of hierarchical structure that would have been in the past. You know, we have our enterprise unit with Breda, who at a very high level engages right down to the initial startup company. We have a significant amount of open democracy models with community forums, with the Latin Quarter and business associations coming in to meet us and having the attached liaison person. But at the same time, you do need the innovators coming to the door. So for example, when Philip from Magnet came to us and said, you know, we're new to the city, what can we do? We said, well, we have an issue around public Wi-Fi. What can be done? We've looked at this. We've looked at it with the Chamber of Commerce for, I'd say, 3 years now. And the solutions coming from the larger companies were certainly pricing us in Galway out of the market. You were talking of Wi-Fi solutions for Galway City running to millions. So we have come up with a pilot which has worked very well in the Spanish Arch, where we have for the food festival, of looking at public Wi-Fi in zones where we know that there will be people, and what we need is people to use public Wi-Fi and access the information we need them to access. So for example, pushing at the moment the Galway 2020 bid to be the capital of culture. So anybody who uses the public Wi-Fi system that Magnet have worked on with us at the Spanish Arch, the landing page is the Galway 2020 bid. And that means people will find out about the bid. And that means next month, when the judges for the 2020 bid walk around the city, hopefully if they stop in a pub or on the street and ask somebody about the 2020 bid, somebody will have access public Wi-Fi, landed on the 2020 bid, and someplace in the back of their head, that information will be there. And they'll say, oh, I know about it. So that's sort of the real applications we need. But we have addressed with the Insight Institute the need for real-time solutions, I suppose. Projects that take the open data that we somewhat put out there and take that information and fine-tune it and give it back to us and say, right, here's the data, here's what you need to do to change your transport system, your environmental system, etc. And we have an agreement in place with, through one of our committees, with the Insight Institute to provide that information. And with Martin, with Neil, etc., we've been working on some projects on that. But it does require, I suppose, that open data. That's the most significant part of it, is gathering that data, and then whether it's a researcher or an engineer talking to us about how to use that data correctly. And it's about the analysis that goes behind that data. because it is great to have the figures, but if you just base your solutions on the data and on the figures and on dashboards, you will come up with a very engineering-led approach, and it needs somebody from the non-engineering side sometimes to say, that won't work. That won't work because of either human behavior or the stats involved in a neighborhood or a community or the community ethos, etc. And it does involve the remit of social inclusion, community development, etc., to build that understanding as well.
Thanks, Liam. I guess, again, conscious of time, I guess a couple of the themes that came out there with Pat when he spoke about, we're fortunate that we've got so much sort of engineering and ICT capability in the region, in the broader region. And I often think we need to think about, we have a dispersed population. It's about region. It's very hard to shoehorn stuff into just a city discussion, and it's one of the attractiveness of the region. But this idea of, and I've always struggled with it. You've got medtech global leadership, you've got ICT global leadership, you've got smart city problems, you've got all of these things. The chances of, however, being able to overlap a conversation where the accountability for those, is very difficult. So I guess, and this is partly to Pat and also to you, Liam, is this idea basically you scaling up into a global solution. In other words, all of the companies here, the SMEs, never look to the region as the market. They're always looking internationally. And then the city has to look internationally to best practices and bring it back in. It's very hard to get a one-for-one match. So it seems to me, as you sort of develop the smart region concept, it's really about a network of smart regions that you can put forward this region as a technology region because it's got leadership in particular areas. And then it's got this ability to be a living lab or for a global business. And I see that's a theme. And one of the questions, why can't Cisco via Huawei solve the problem? And of course, it doesn't work like that in the same way as Medtronic and Boston Scientific are not going to solve the healthcare problems locally either. So maybe Pat, and to me that's part of the vision as to how do we work within that to create this longer-term technology vision for the city, of which all the stakeholders can contribute. It's part of a bigger ecosystem. Maybe Pat, you can comment on that, maybe based on your experiences.
I think we're all busy. I think clusters matter, and you need to have some proximity. So you kind of need to create opportunities where people will come together and ideally get some of the leadership interested in the idea, and then figure out a little bit of a win-win. So if I put in the extra effort, what am I trying to do, and what is the other companies trying to do? And there's a little bit of, so for example, if we're having a medical conference happening in Galway, which I'm sure there is every year, can we add in some sort of medtech IT element to it? Maybe as a topic or something, and then build on that. That's an example. Or can we do something else? So we need to find ways to get the cross-pollination happening. I think the colleges are very important. And I'll give you one other example. Like I found even in Dublin, just being physically close matters. So if you want to encourage a bit of regular interaction, you kind of need to try and find ways. So if you're going to have a medical IT thing, try and have it close to the university and the hospital.
Maybe you want to take a question? Was that a question? No. Okay. Okay. So I think that's a very interesting approach. And in my experience, as being in multinationals, as many others are just struggling to get Ireland or Dublin and its ecosystem of smart areas, of its technology, the ability to run living labs, which is really the sort of, it really is the inward investment catalyst these days. So struggling to put Dublin on the map at its scale and its ecosystem, not to mind sort of Galway or regional city, is a real challenge. So it kind of plays to that point. So maybe, Liam, do you want to?
Yeah, I think the idea of the city as a living lab is important for a whole range of sectors. Because whether it's the multinational sector or an EI client or indeed a Leo client, you cannot just trade within the city limits. You have to expand, you have to look outside, you have to grow your finance, your HR and your ideas internationally. And it is possible to do that, but it's only possible to do that by networking things together properly. The size of Galway supports that. The existing networks support that. But you do need to have the the ideas of the Porter Shed and those type of incubators where people will take the next jump on. 4 or 5 years ago, there wouldn't have been a conference like Innovating West, or there wouldn't have been a follow-up Porter Shed or things like that. The opportunity now to continually bounce off each other, the venture capital conference at the end of last September, etc. All of these things begin to bounce off each other. And all of these things, because the networking system in Galway is quite small, it's possible for that cross-pollination to happen. But the city has the opportunity to be the living lab of that cross-pollination. And Insight and other elements of the university and GMIT, that's where they can sort of create that pollination.
Yeah, I mean, the vision of the university all the way through the incubation spaces, through to the new smart stadium of the future on the sports ground, to the docklands is certainly one to go after. Maybe in the interest of time, if I go to Martin, because you've worked with lots of different networks and regional networks, and so you're just back from California, and I pointed out some examples this morning. Maybe you've got some quick learnings, and then we'll take maybe one more question, and then we'll go for lunch.
Well, my contribution will be probably to address also the question, which is quite interesting, but it's not really a question, because there is no cost that you can value into a smart city. There is not really an amount of money. There is a strategy that you can follow to build your smart city based on the needs for the citizens. So in that side, in this way, we can define a perfect size strategy to follow the needs of the citizens. And because in all this range of 250 cities in Europe, none of them looks equal. None of them maybe follow the same strategy, but at the end of the results are the same. So having systems, having solutions that works better for the citizen, having systems that work efficiently to solve the problems. And obviously, as you can imagine, there are common problems: traffic, mobility, tourism, events management, sports evolution. But all these things needs to be somehow roadmap and plan in this evolution. What we have learned in all these years, in all these projects, is that the best strategies are the ones that are focused in co-creation. So when the citizens get involved in this creation of solutions, because top-down approach is easier, because you can have a national policy, but when you reach the level of the citizens, there will be always gaps, there will always disagreements. But when you involve the citizens, they are the only ones suffering the bottom part of the pyramid, and then they can also contribute to build the better solutions. And obviously the technologies are the enablers to solve the problems. So that will be probably the first message. That's why we have a good opportunity in Galway to have these close interactions and solve the real problems that are in the city.
Okay, I think, is that a lunch call or a question, Dave, right?
I was just going to ask a question, if I may. Sure. We'll go for lunch in a minute anyway, but just on a practical application, with the macro level description that you're suggesting, how can some of the student entrepreneurs here, the Blackstone people, how can they get into actually building things that can create businesses and value to sit on top of the great research that you guys are doing?
Yes. Well, essentially there is the OASC, for example, Open Agile Smart Cities, has a good strategy to address.
Pardon? What's the name of it?
Open Agile Smart Cities, OASC. Has some strategies to precisely address these industrial needs, right? There are other organizations like ENOL, a European network of living labs that focus in the living labs co-creation to precisely have a different strategy, because they need to go for co-funding, right? And one of the questions here, I think, is from a venture capital, right? Like, how much money you need? And this is a typical question in California, in Silicon Valley. How much you need to do your projects, to do your smart city? Obviously, you can go as high as you can, as high as you want, but the higher you go, the more problems you will have, because you need to solve more problems, right? So if you start from the beginning with a good strategy, with a good company that is cautious in terms of a solution, with experience in solutions, then you can really go step by step. So that will be probably the best way to address this one in terms of entrepreneurship, right? In terms of investors' capital, venture capital, there are completely different strategies that need to be addressed in that domain.
Thanks. Was it on?
Could I? Yeah. I think one of the interesting things about what everyone's been talking about, something I experienced in New York was we worked with the Bloomberg administration on probably one of the biggest guerrilla urban design projects ever, which was the pedestrianization of Broadway. And in that process, we came across a company called New York & Co. I don't know if you've come across them, but they're deliberately setting up relationships, digital relationships across cities and making partnerships. I think to David's question about what can the Galwegians do here is looking outward and is making connection with all those other cities. And one of the beauties of the digitization of all these cities is in fact the connect that we can make between them. So I think that would be a strong theme maybe next year, would be a kind of bring some global players in about connection.
I agree, yeah.
Can you just add the Magnet practical manifestation of a student who wants to engage? I'll give you a desk. I'll give you 20 gigabit broadband. You can have a desk in my office here in London, in Dublin, and go play on our network. That's what it really is about. So if you want to come and play and go and innovate, I'll give you a desk, give you connectivity, and off you go. So go at it.
Okay. One more question there, and I want to let Ali back in then. Okay.
Yeah, there's I know we only have the event producer is going to have to cut it now, but just one. It's just particularly engaging. I think there's actually merit for a full Smart Cities conference, I believe, for you guys. It's an amazing topic. Just lastly, before I get killed.
This question is actually for Liam Hanrahan. So I'm listening to the Smart Cities topic here, and I've been listening to it over the last couple of years at various conferences, and it's absolutely amazing, the breadth of innovation that's happening, but it's very, very fragmented. So when people talk about smart cities, there's a bit about technology, there's a bit about like the environment, there's a bit about traffic. And I'm going, well, how's Galway going to differentiate ourselves? And I believe, we were saying, how can entrepreneurs get on top of insights, data, and create these great apps? And I believe how we could differentiate ourselves between here and next year would be, Liam, if you brought the City Council together and published a vision for Galway City, and what are our values and what do we want to be as a society. So we say from social inclusion to health to traffic to everything else, and then say involve somebody like Dairylinks and get them to publish out the open data from Galway City Council in partnership with Insight. Publish that out, set a deadline for 3 months' time, publish it out and say to the incubator lab that's coming up with Portrait and say, hey, our first round of companies coming out are going to focus on consuming that data and align ourselves with enabling, whether it be the health, the social inclusion, the traffic goals of solving them problems. And Galway will then publish out how we've succeeded in that and differentiate ourselves on a world stage and show what we've done in the course of 12 months. So this time next year, we've got like 10 startups that have solved real core problems being replicated out to countries around the world.
Just to, I suppose, quickly answer that, Galway City Council and our partners, IDA, Enterprise Ireland, the Leo office, the HSE, the Guards, etc., last year in November published a local economic and community plan, which includes development of a smart city initiative with the Insight Institute, which includes the plans at local community area for primary care units, which includes the development of open data, transport initiatives, policing initiatives, etc. That's a long-standing process that local authorities have been involved in. It's not something new in terms of how we do it. Open.gov.ie is where we publish our open data sources. That's, again, something that's been there for a significant length of time. We've also, with the Whitaker Institute here last year, developed the Galway dashboard, which essentially took all of the Galway sources of data from the CSO to what the university and the Whitaker Institute had developed for us locally here. And we've published that. That's the Galway dashboard.ie or .com, I can't remember which, but it's up there. And the Insight Institute have agreed to work with us in the next couple of months to make that into a living updatable website. But I suppose the main thing is that a lot of this stuff is there. A lot of these plans are there. They just have to be, people have to find their niche within what's there. You know,
Yeah, I agree.
The plans
And
are there. You know,
that's
the
my
social
point.
inclusion
That's my
plans are
point.
there.
Is we have such an opportunity for a quick win here because all of that's there. All the foundations are there. But what we just need is somebody to shape it, make it really focused, so that we can turn around, execute on this, have 10 core problems that are solved, and show them as an example at next year's Innovating West. It's really somebody to get the Lean Startup Canvas modified for e-participation, and they get startups solving very focused problems. Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. We'll probably cut it there.
Yeah.
I want to